Hello everyone and welcome to the video boss fight guide for Tyth, the first boss in the Gods from the Machine operation. Tyth's a fairly easy and straightforward fight in story mode, with really a few things to be aware of, and honestly a lot of them can be ignored. So we're going to make this relatively quick. There's a bit more to talk about in hard mode, although it's not so much in hard mode that there's a ton more mechanics, so much as there's just enough of them that the chaotic nature of this fight can be a bit tricky. Okay, so here we go. So Tyth himself is really not the focus of this op. It's really an ad-based fight. And so from a tanking perspective, this is going to be really easy. You're going to grab the boss, you're going to pull him over to the side of the platform. I prefer kind of the east point on the map here. And he doesn't have a knockback, but he does have two different cleaves. You'll see he's got a conal, an angular cleave you saw there. Then he's got a very narrow one called Energy Wave there. You're just going to hold him there the entire fight. Now, the main focus for this fight really is managing ads and how those interact with Tyth. Now, there's 4 types of ads, which we're going to talk about here in just a moment. Each of those has different abilities and do have a couple of mechanics you do need to be aware of. The main thing that matters for Tyth, however, is his stacks of rage. Now, we'll zoom this in a moment, but if you look at Tyth's focus target bar at the top middle, you'll see he has 2 stacks of rage, which is the orangish reddish buff. And then there's also a gray buff to the right of it that keeps ticking down and then refreshes, and then ticks down and refreshes. And so what happens is every time an ad is killed by a player, Tyth picks up 1 stack of rage. If he hits any ads with his cleave attacks, then he will pick up 3 stacks of rage. And the biggest primary goal for this fight is to keep him below 10 stacks of rage, because if he reaches 10 stacks of rage, he is going to do this rage overload attack that's going to do a fair bit of AoE to the group. It's not a huge deal. It's not a raid wipe in story mode, although it is in hard mode. So you want to keep his stacks manageable. The other thing that's relevant is the white debuff is Rage Decay. That's a debuff that ticks down, and it resets anytime Tyth gains a stack of rage. But if you don't kill any ads, or you go a period of time where you don't kill any ads, that debuff will count down, and when it expires, it refreshes itself, and he drops a stack. Which basically means if you can compress killing all the ads, you can manage those pretty well. Now, before we go any further, let's now talk about ads. Okay, so now let's talk about the ads. Periodically, after a little bit of opening downtime on the fight, ads are going to start to spawn. In story mode, you're going to get 3 per wave initially, while the boss's health is above 60%. Once you push below 60%, you're going to get 4. They're always going to be at similar positions. You'll see the graphics markers. They're going to be at the northeast, the northwest, and the southwest on the map. You'll see them pop up here in just a moment. You'll also see their graphic indicators indicating both where they're going to spawn as well as what type they're going to be. Yellow are Guardian Droids. That's the one you see me attacking here. They're the most annoying because they're highly mobile, and if you're not careful, they will aggro and run under the boss. And so for this reason, your tanks need to be careful about using AoE taunts, because you do not want ads to run under the boss. Now the other ones are the Lance Droids, which are these guys here, that they have the red marker, so you can see another one's about to spawn, along with another Guardian Droid. The Lance Droids put down those red conals. Now those really aren't super relevant to players. They do a little bit of damage, but they don't do a ton of damage. What is relevant is they put a debuff on whoever they hit that prevents you from shielding attacks. So the main thing there is if you can, you do want to pick up their aggro so that they target you and not the tank, because if they clip your tank, then your tank isn't able to shield any attacks, and now he's not really a tank, he's just a really bad DPS that builds a lot of threat. Those are 2 of the 4. Another one that you're going to see periodically, and I'll point out here in a moment, is a Justice Droid. A Justice Droid has a blue graphical indicator. The Justice Droid has a big shield, lightning shield around itself, that if you run into the shield, you will pick up stacks of a dot that tick for damage. Those are cleansable and should be cleansed. Ideally, what you want to do with those is you want to stun them, which interrupts their shield, and then DPS them down. And if you get too many stacks, you step out of the group. So here you see there's a Justice Droid on the left of the screen. So you want to be careful about running in there until you're actually ready to damage them. So here I'm running in. You see I pick up 1 stack, 2 stacks of the debuff. We stun it so its shield is interrupted, and the stacks drop off, and now it's back up. So you can play this game to manage it. Another thing you can do is if you cleave it with the Lance Droid conals, those will also interrupt its shield. So if you watch closely, you'll see that actually happened. The 4th droid is one that doesn't actually attack anyone. It's green, and it usually will happen every other ad wave. So we didn't have one this wave we see here. We would see one in another wave if we had one. So let's skip to one where we have one. Okay, so this next ad wave, we're going to see one just kind of the bottom right of the screen here. We're going to see a green marker. That's the Grace Droid. You need to assign a DPS to deal with the Grace Droid, regardless of what your strategy is. The Grace Droid can be used to manage stacks of rage. So I'm going to DPS this Guardian Droid. You see the green Grace Droid channeling that green energy beam. The Grace Droid has 2 different casts. It has a Veras Grace and a Veras Restoration. Veras Restoration is the green cast. It will do 3 times. Each of those casts will reduce Tyth's stacks of rage by 1, but will heal him. After 3 of those casts, it'll do a Veras Grace, which is a yellow glowing cast that will drop 3 stacks of rage, but will give Tyth a fairly sizable damage resistance buff for a short time. And so, ideally, you would just kill the Grace Droid, but it can be difficult to keep your stacks as low as you need to. And so that's probably the trickiest part of this fight. Story mode is when do you let those casts go out and when do you not? Because every cast that goes out does extend the fight. So you saw there, Tyth actually got to 10 stacks and did his Rage Overload. Not a big deal in story mode. Okay, so we'll do one more kill video and just a couple things to talk about, and then you're pretty much clear to go. So in terms of strategy, what do you need to do? Again, the main thing is your tank needs to keep the boss to the corner. I prefer due east on the minimap. Of the 4 ad spawn positions, the southeast one typically does not have an ad until you get below 60%, which means you're on the side where you're not right near an ad spawn. And once you get 4 ads, you'll actually be equidistant between them. So that it makes it fairly easy to avoid clipping any ads or them running under your feet, as long as the tank doesn't AoE taunt. The other thing you'll note is that there is a debuff you need to cleanse when you can. You'll see the tank here has 10 stacks of this debuff. It's not a huge deal to cleanse it. It doesn't make a massive impact because, again, Tyth doesn't do a ton of damage. But you want to cleanse it when you can. DPS need to kill ads. That's pretty straightforward. In particular, if you have an off tank that's either in tank spec or just a DWT, should be trying to wrangle up those ads to make it as efficient as possible to AoE them down. The better you do that, the faster you kind of kill all those ads. And you want to group those as tightly together as you can so that the rage stacks drop off efficiently. Whenever the Grace Droid comes out, you need to have someone assigned to deal with it. And they just need to deal with it based on the number of stacks. If Tyth is really, really low, like here he's at like 1 stack, partly because the Grace Droid got a cast out, but if he's at like 1 or 2 or 3 stacks, just kill the Grace Droid. Even after you kill all of those ads, you're still going to be below 10, and you've got time for stacks to drop off. If you're at like 4 to, let's say, 6 or 7, I would let a couple or maybe all of the green casts go out, and then interrupt the yellow, the Veras Grace cast, and kill the droid. That'll drop you a couple stacks, enough to get through the ad wave. If you're really high, if you're at like 9 or 10, sometimes it's a good idea to let the Grace Droid just chain cast its abilities until you get your stacks low. Because, again, the Rage Overload is not a huge deal, but it is a bit annoying. The other thing that'll happen as well is, so there's a Rage Overload here, so it does about 30% health. Once Tyth gets below 30% health, you may have seen it on the focus bar if you're watching closely. He'll enact an ability called Intensify Rage, where he adds a stack periodically. And so really, once you get below about 30%, ideally, you want DPS just to focus the boss and have an off tank or a DWT gathering up ads and just kind of keeping them away from the group, and you just kind of burn them down. And then after you do that, you clean up the ads. Pretty easy fight, pretty straightforward. Really, really simple, and honestly, you can ignore a lot of these mechanics and still be successful. So anyway, hope this is helpful. Good luck. Gods is really fun op. Thanks. Bye.